Good afternoon. So I was hoping to get out and do a little bit of flying today, as you can see here, but annoyingly it's actually not very good weather. Probably looks like it's really nice, doesn't it? It's nice blue sky and it's nice and sunny, but it's actually really windy. Probably doesn't really seem like that on the camera here, but yeah, it's currently blowing about 20-25 mile per hour gusts. It's annoying because in between the gusts it's it's nice and calm, but the gusts are pretty strong, and yeah, it means that I can't really fly this one today, which is a bit annoying. But I still wanted to get a video out anyway, so I thought what I would do is I'd just tell you a fun little story. And the story I'm going to tell you actually involves this field that I'm in now, and it's actually the story of how it is that I got into flying fixed wing drones. So many years ago, like a lot of us, I got into this hobby through quadcopters. I started out with multirotors. At the very beginning I had a DJI Phantom 1 until it flew away, like they all did. But after that I then quite quickly transitioned into race quads. And yeah, for a couple of years I was doing that. And I used to mostly fly them down here, down the very far end down there. There's a couple of trees, and me and my buddies used to set up tracks down there and we used to race them around. I was terrible at it. I really wasn't very good at race quads. And also I found them very frustrating. One, because they just don't fly very long. And two, because you're forever crashing the damn things and you're forever breaking them and then having to buy replacement parts. So yeah, it was expensive and it was annoying. But anyway, yeah, I was flying race quads for a fair few years. And then one of my buddies, he then got his first wing. It's a little tiny wing. I can't remember the size. I think it's like maybe like a 400mm wing or something, a little small one. And sometimes on the track racing sessions, he'd bring the little wing down and fly it around. And he was really keen for me to get one. He kept saying like, no, Giz, you should buy one, you should buy one. And they're only cheap, they're only a couple of quid. So I did eventually buy one, but then I just put the box in a cupboard at home, and that's where it stayed for quite a long time. I think it's in there for a couple of months because I wasn't really interested, to be honest. Because I was more interested in flying the race quads. But anyway, as part of being a race quad pilot, or a drone pilot in general, like you do quite often, meet other guys, other people that are interested in the hobby. And one of the guys I met was a guy called Chris. He's a really nice guy, and he was a really good pilot actually. When I first met him, he was a complete noob, but actually in the space of a couple of months, he actually overtook me in terms of skills. He's just naturally really talented at it, unlike me. But yeah, I met this guy called Chris, who was a very good pilot. But what he was lacking was any ability to actually build. For some reason, he just couldn't seem to get his head around how to do soldering or putting wiring and things. Like he just found that really complicated. So what ended up happening was I'd quite often build his quads for him, which is fine. I didn't mind doing that. But when I built his quads for him, I'd build his quads the same as mine, quite literally the same as mine. And you'll see why I mention that in a minute. But anyway, so one day I was down here flying with Chris. And like I said, Chris was quite a good pilot, and it wasn't too bad. And we didn't always do racing. Sometimes we'd do a bit of like just acro, like just do the stunts and whatnot. And one day, me and Chris were down here flying, and we both set up our quads on the ground side by side, powered them up, and then we agreed that on the count of three, we'd arm the quads, and then we'd just go full throttle, just straight up to about 100 meters, whatever, and then we'd do a bit of acrobatics. So that's what we did. Got the quads powered up, got our goggles turned on, got our radios turned on, put the goggles on our head, counted to three, and then literally went full throttle, and both the quads rocketed up into the sky, up to about 100 meters, and that was fine. Except when we got up to the top of that climb, I think I did like a roll to the right, except that's not what happened. My quad did a roll to the left, or it did a turn to the left, or something. And I was a bit confused about that. I was like, well, why did that happen? So then I think I tried turning the quad to the left or the right, but instead it zoomed off across the field, and I think it did a power loop or something. And it was in that moment that I suddenly realised the terrible mistake I'd made, I wasn't actually tuned into my quad, I was tuned into Chris's. Like I said, I built his quad to be basically exactly the same as mine, and that also meant that I laid out his OSD to be exactly the same as mine. So in a bit of a dim minute, when I set up the aircraft and I turned on my goggles, I didn't think to actually check whether I was on the right channel or not. I just assumed I was, but actually I was tuned into Chris's channel, probably because I literally just built his quad for him, and that's where I'd left the goggle settings on. So yeah, I was then finding myself in the awkward situation where I was flying my quad, quite a high power quad, completely blind. And I can't remember exactly what it was, what module I had on the goggles, but it was a bit fiddly at the time to try and change the channel. So I figured the best thing to do would be to quickly whip off the goggles, catch a glimpse of the quad line of sight, and then I'll bring it into land. Except as I pulled the goggles off my head, in the exact same moment, all I heard was a thud from these trees up here somewhere. That was the sound of the quad hitting the top of those trees, at which point the quad lost power and all I could see in the goggles was static. So yeah, that wasn't exactly my finest moment in the hobby. That it was a bit of a noob error. Anyway, after that, obviously I went looking for the quad, but we couldn't find it. I definitely heard a thud from the top of one of these trees. Now this was in the middle of the summer, so the trees are full of leaves and foliage. Like, you couldn't see through them like you can now. But we hunted quite extensively. We couldn't find anything. Obviously we also hunted down on the ground along here to see if we could see if whether it had fallen out of the tree, but we couldn't find anything. So the very next day I came down with a big powerful pair of binoculars, and I sat over there somewhere just peering up at these trees, trying to see if I could spot a glimpse of it, but I couldn't. On the other side of this fence here there's a little stream, and then there's a path on the other side. So I also went over there, searched in the stream, walked up and down the path. There used to be a lot of bushes here as well. I went wandering through all of those bushes, but couldn't find any sign of the quad anywhere at all. It had completely disappeared. And to this day, it's about 5-6 years later now, to this day, no sign of that quad has ever been found. It has literally disappeared. So that was the end of my race quad days. I could have, in theory, gone and bought the parts and built another quad if I wanted to. But actually I was feeling quite bitter about the whole experience. I mean, I think that particular quad, I'd only owned it for a couple of weeks and it was quite expensive, so I was quite annoyed at the fact, obviously I'd lost all that money. It's very noisy. I was quite annoyed at the fact I lost all that money. Didn't really want to pay out to build a new quad. But obviously I had that the little fixed wing at home that had been sat in the box for ages. So that was the moment where I decided, you know what, let's give that a go. So I think it was a little P&P aircraft as well. It came with the motor and ESC and everything. I think all I had to do was add a receiver or whatever. So yeah, that's how I ended up building my first fixed wing aircraft. It was because I lost my race quad up there somewhere and I can never find it again. So yeah, that's how I got started. And obviously I built that first little wing and actually really enjoyed it. And then decided I wanted to build another wing, which is a bit more powerful and a bit bigger, which ended up being my S800. And yeah, that's how it all began. And ever since then, I've been flying fixed wings. So yeah, just a random little story for you whilst I was walking through the area. Thought you might just find it interesting to hear. Apologies if all you could hear was the wind on this video. Like I said, it is a very windy day. Kind of see it there a bit now actually. The trees are moving a fair bit in the gusts. But yeah, I hope you found this interesting. Hopefully I'll have a new flying video out pretty soon. I'm not allowed to say very much about this, but Caddx is sending me a new toy to play with. Hopefully I'll have that in the next couple of days. And there'll be a video on that, so keep an eye out for it. Anyway, hope you enjoyed this little video and I'll catch you next time. Cheers guys, bye.